welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this episode of Champions Journey in the Scrap the 9 to 5 Champions Guild, where this week we are celebrating the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Valeriy Sevyrakov. I always love pronouncing your surname, hopefully correctly, my friend.
You did a fantastic job. Thank you for having me, Dan.
You're more than welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. So I'm going to do a quick overview for anyone watching, just of who you are and what specifically we're going to talk about here, which is essentially your journey of replacing your income through trading in the forex markets. And as we go through this, the intention for anyone watching is really just to give you a bit of a sense of what Valeriy's done, what Valeriy's achieved, and how, if you are somebody who's maybe trapped in an unfulfilling career, maybe feel that you're trading your time for money, doing something that you don't want to be doing, working for a boss that you don't want to be working for, and essentially you feel that you don't have choice, you don't have freedom, and you don't have control in this area of your life, then I think this is going to be a very interesting conversation. So Valeriy, thank you very much for joining us, my friend. It is a pleasure because obviously we have known each other for quite a long time on your journey and my journey. And recently I've connected with you through my own efforts I've been doing with trading. And it's been a pleasure to see the impact that you have been having in your community for really helping people to master this as a way to replace their own income and start to create change in their own lives. So
you're doing a fantastic job with trading, by the way.
Thank you, buddy. I really appreciate it. A lot of it is down to your wisdom and expertise. It is much appreciated. So as we start this conversation, Valeriy, if you could please just give someone watching a little bit of a sense of where you came from, what was it about your current situation that you weren't happy with, and how did you ultimately end up in this world of trading?
Great. So my journey of taking the responsibility for my own life into my own hands started in, I would say, 2011 when I got married. Before that, my main priority in life was playing video games, World of Warcraft, and all that stuff. And then after I got married, I I decided that now it's time to become an adult, to grow up a bit. Yeah. And then I found a job and we moved to a different city. And then I started basically working in a 9-to-5 for the first time in my life in 2013. So 2 years after we got married. And then I actually quickly realized that earning money and not just living from your student loans is not a bad thing at all, and from there it really started. I wanted to increase my quality of life, and therefore I was always striving for a higher payout, for a higher salary. I was always good at what I was doing in the job, and I went to my boss every, let's say, 6 to 12 months asking for a promotion. Changed a lot of companies until I got to the point where I was, working in a big company. It's an insurance company called Alliance. Maybe you've heard about it. Big corporate. And I was working as a designer there for a year or so until I became a father. And this was really the second milestone where I needed to reevaluate how I want to live my life now, not just as a husband, but also as a father or family man. And what happened is that this corporate environment was just not something that inspired me to go to job, especially since I had wife and kid at home who desperately needed my help and attention. And I remember I was sitting in a meeting. Those of you guys who work in the 9-to-5 big corporate environments will potentially resonate with what I'm going to say. I was sitting in a meeting. I was invited to that meeting with no real reason. I just needed to be there, for the sake of it. And I remember spending 2 or 3 times, 2 or 3 hours there in that room listening to some presentations, and I was like, what the hell am I doing here? I just that was that epiphany moment where I realized that I need to do something differently. I couldn't really get a bigger salary at that point because I was already making let's say the maximum that you can make in Germany as a designer. So I hit that ceiling, in terms of how much I can make. And I realized that I don't necessarily want to earn more. I want to have more time. I want to
Yeah.
have more time, and I want to have more freedom. It was not just about the time. It was about also about the fact that in these companies, or at least where I was working, I felt like I was forced to do things, forced to have a specific schedule, forced to be there at a specific time, and
Mm.
more as I started to realize that it is not the right path, I saw confirmation everywhere that this is just not a good fit for my personality. And so the first thing that I, started researching at that point in terms of how to get out of this was trading. I don't even remember anymore how I got to know, about this industry, maybe just, accidentally, but I knew that people are doing this from the comfort of their own home, and they do it as long as they want to do it, and it sounded like exactly what I needed at that point. And so, having no expertise and no idea about what this world is, I just googled for trading, let's say trading online. And I remember I have discovered a like a trading platform. It wasn't even forex or anything. It was binary options. It's more like,
Mm.
it's more like betting and not trading. You would basically just try to predict where the price is going to go, and then you can win or lose. So
Mm.
I remember I was sitting in the office, and please don't tell it to my to my ex-boss, but I had like two tabs open, and in one tab I had this trading platform, in the other tab I was working, and
Yeah.
it was extremely stressful. I remember I needed to like go out of the office and smoke a cigarette like every 10 minutes because how stressful that was. You know,
Yeah.
um, doing that stuff manually. So, it was, I saw the potential, but I very quickly realized that, it also would require me to become, someone, not someone else, but become a person who knows how to deal with all the emotions that come with it,
Mm.
and to have the discipline to create a trading strategy. So I very quickly realized that in order to succeed in that scene, I need to prepare much better, right? And at that point, by accident, I also discovered marketing as a potential vehicle to create, to make money online. And I, threw myself into that. I left, let's say the trading scene for a few years. Um, had a pretty successful career as an affiliate marketer, but then later in 2019, I actually decided to give it another try, and I wanted to I really wanted to succeed at this because there are some benefits to trading that are hard to compete with.
Mm.
Um, and the biggest benefit is actually the fact that there is no ceiling in terms of how much you can make with trading. If you're employed, you usually have a specific salary, and no matter whether you're good at what you do or not, you're just making your salary. And if you want to make more, usually you need to get some sort of a management position or do something completely different, right? And with trading, the income that is that can potentially be made with trading is always percentage based. It just
Mm-hmm.
depends on the capital that you're operating. So as your capital is growing, your income is growing, and there is really no limit in terms of how much you can make. It would only be determined by your
Mm.
psychology.
Yeah.
So, and I really love that idea. I really wanted to earn as much as I want to earn. I didn't want anyone to tell me how much I am worth. I
Mm.
wanted to determine that myself. And so as I started, doing research, doing more research about the markets, what are the different financial markets. The three biggest are, the stock market, the forex market, and the crypto market. I would say nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
First, I needed to understand what is the difference, what market is best for the way I want to do trading, and the thing is, in the market that I decided to go into, which is the forex market, a new, let's say era.
Mm.
Came into existence just recently, and this is about algorithmic trading. It's about, let's say, automated trading, not fully
Mm.
automated, but the execution is done by a specific software, by a specific algorithm, and not by hands manually. And I
Yeah.
remembered this episode of my life where I was switching tabs and trying to open and close trades manually, and it was extremely stressful. So when I learned about the fact that this process can be automated, I
Mm.
became seriously excited about the vision. So, and I embarked on that journey of finding a software that would basically help me execute my trading strategy in a more or less automated way, so that I can have as much time as I want to do things, that I love, spending time with my family, travel, and so on, while the system that I would set up would basically do the trading, hard work for me.
Mm,
This was really, revolutionary, and I actually never thought before that this would even exist. But as I learned why it is, exists, and later I learned why it is possible to, leverage such technology in the forex space, I totally knew that it is possible. So the first step was finding the technology, but technology alone is usually not enough, because what I needed to learn next is how to operate this technology efficiently. And the technology that I started to use in the beginning, there was no real education or tutorials around it. I needed to figure out how to use it, myself. Did a lot of mistakes, but eventually I think I have figured out how to use it. But still, I'm assuming that it was not the most optimal way. So I
mm,
knew that if the second thing that you would really need in order to succeed in that industry is guidance. So ideally, someone or a community of people who also use the same or a similar product, and they also have the same goal and the same vision, and you can not only, you know um, you can basically learn from them, right? You can see what they do, you can compare their results to your results, and if you go this journey together with a community of people, there are undeniable benefits that come with it. So I couldn't find a community like this,
mm.
unfortunately, so I decided to create one myself.
Love it.
So I reached out to a few people who I knew also would want to learn how to create income streams online, and we did the testing together, and then we started with 3 or 4 people, and we now grew to over 200, which shows me that there is definitely interest, and
Mm,
we enjoy it collectively. And every day when I look at the results other people are achieving with such software, I learn something new, because everyone thinks differently, everyone makes decisions slightly differently, right? So every time someone is sharing his trading results, I get some ideas that I can improve upon myself. So this is the thing number two, right? Technology and community. um, I think that there is one more piece that I have discovered just recently, and this was like the final, let's say, puzzle piece that was missing to make it also accessible to anyone who wants to start on this journey without going through the process of figuring everything out on himself, or
mm.
just by looking what other people do. And the third missing puzzle is actually the ability to learn from the creator of this technology himself directly. So, there are platforms out there that would allow you to not just choose a software to use, to benefit in the financial markets, but also to join calls and to reach out to the creator of the software. And the creator of the software usually knows best how to operate it, and the creator of the software would also teach, beginners how to use the software properly. And that was really where we started to grow, exponentially, because we no longer needed to figure out things ourselves. New members who join right now, they would just, um, join the weekly call with the developer of the software, see what the developer is doing. Maybe they will ask some questions to the community, and they have a very smooth ride. I wish I would have access to all of this myself when I started back
Mm.
then, but hey, I needed to do my own mistakes to learn from my lessons, and now I know exactly what is needed for a new person who is entering that scene to do as little and as few mistakes as possible, to actually avoid all the stress and all the let's say obstacles that usually new traders encounter on that path.
Love it, mate. That is okay. So I'm going to recap that, because that was a whole load of awesome in one go. So you basically came from the corporate world after having this epiphany moment, sitting in the meeting, and
Yeah.
you're like, what am I doing with my time? Why am I here? Why am I not with my wife, with my son? Why am I having this work situation control everything that I do with my life and time, when you wanted choice, you wanted freedom, etc. And so that was kind of an epiphany moment that led you to start exploring options. You came across trading. You also then got into affiliate marketing, but trading was something that you really were kind of passionate about and wanted to crack the code, so to speak. And then 2019, you really immersed yourself in trading and noticed that for people who are starting out, who are in a position where, like you, they want to get out of an unfulfilling career, the things that they need are community. With algorithmic software nowadays, it means that the average person is able to run, let's say, a far more advanced strategy without all the stress and the needing to be sitting there looking at charts all day.
Exactly.
So community, software, and also training from the developers and builders of the software. So it's like literally you're learning from the people who built it to understand how it works, and therefore developing a strategy that will allow you to spend time with the people you love, to be there, in your case, with your son, with your wife during the day, instead of having to sit in boring meetings in the corporate world. Does that pretty much cover it all?
That covers it all, and I cannot emphasize, and it's I still find it hard to believe that this is reality, to be honest with you. I cannot even remember that time, where and it was just like 3 years ago. It wasn't, and I still, my brain decided to just forget about it, because I can no longer imagine executing some work that someone else would ask me to do. I cannot even imagine. Was this as a trader, you need to also be very proactive. Like a book that I would recommend anyone, and that is not trading related at all. The book is called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This book is basically shows the difference between someone who lives a reactive life, reacting to the circumstances of his life, and someone who is living a proactive life. And living a proactive life means setting specific goals and doing the taking the small steps that are needed to achieve the goal, and then on to the next one, right? So as I decided when I became a father to take my life into my own hands, and I embraced the responsibility that comes with it, which is extremely terrifying. It's not like it is an easy choice to leave a very well paid job and start pursuing a career where I basically know little about. But it was, to me, taking this risk was more appealing than to continue to just execute someone's tasks that I personally didn't even found very fulfilling to execute. Nothing against the insurance industry, but just investing all my energy and time helping rich people protect their, I don't know, like belongings. It's hard to be passionate about it. I know some people are, but I just wasn't.
So I can definitely relate to that, Valerie. Like, obviously I wasn't in insurance, I was in software sales, but similar kind of feeling. Everything that I was doing, it was like, I don't really want to be doing this. I'm doing this because this is my job role, but I'm not passionate about it. And so I definitely, relate to what you're sharing there, mate. I think a lot of people do as well.
That's fantastic. And also the other thing that I think is important to mention is that the most fulfilling thing in life is helping others. Right. So through learning how to use this, first step is always to find a way to benefit yourself, right? But then as you learn, you always have people who also want to learn. And then no matter how advanced you think you are, you always have something to share, some new ideas. If you're making mistakes, and you will inevitably go through some failures on the path, through sharing them, you help other people to avoid the same mistakes. And it is so fulfilling to see how people are basically very thankful for that, and helping other people to achieve financial success. This is something that is truly important to me on a very, very deep level. My purpose in life is to open doors for people to believe in themselves so that they can create a life they truly want. So when I realized that I can help people achieve financial, freedom and success through teaching them how to benefit in that industry, I just became obsessed about it. And it was less about my own results. It was more about the fact that with my work, I can actually have a real impact, and I can actually contribute to someone else's, bank account and wallet. For some, I don't know why, but this is just something that is extremely important to me personally. Maybe because I used to, I was growing up in Ukraine, poor kid, always dreamt about, having enough cash flow to be able to afford what I want to afford. Never had the ability to do so. Probably this is why I'm so crazy right now about helping other people who are in a similar situation. They just don't know, like, they just don't see the path, and I'm very excited and, motivated to help other people achieve that same, type of result and growth.
Love it.
Yeah, I can talk about this forever, so please guide the conversation.
No, of course, mate. I mean, like I witness this day in, day out, because I'm in your community as a student as well. And it was you who introduced me to trading. And it's something that I've really thrown myself into alongside everything we do in Scrap the 9 to 5. But I just love like geeking out over it. And something that is funny, it actually frustrates me, is that when you're using algorithmic software, there is an element of like you set things up, you put your settings in at the start of the week, over the weekend, and then you kind of just let it do its thing. And I'm like, I want to sort of, get stuck in and get involved, but there's not really anything to do. Like, it's kind of doing everything for you. And I've got to disclaim this, by the way, like for anyone watching, any trading software or any time that Valeriy talks about, whether we talk about results or set and forget software and things like that, is you've got to remember that anytime you're in financial markets in any way, there is always risk involved. There's no such thing as risk-free, completely and utterly automated, guaranteed results. It's not true. There's always going to be risk involved. So I just want to make that crystal clear, even though there is so much more opportunity than there ever has been with technology available nowadays in, not just trading, but many industries, trading in particular, though, there still is obviously risk involved in financial markets.
This is true. And actually, most of the time that I spend in this, let's say industry, is not with thinking about how to make profits. Actually, I think I never spend time thinking about how to make profits. Actually, I always am thinking how to reduce the risk. Right. So in trading, if you know how to reduce the risk and you are, not losing your money, automatically, the results will be positive and accumulating over time. This is the rule number one in trading and investing: never lose your money. Right. So this is where I spend the most time actually thinking about various tools and strategies and mindsets to be able to avoid losses and avoid mistakes and to mitigate the risk as much as possible. Because with trading, you got to understand that in order to be successful with this, you need to have a long time horizon due to the nature of the beast. Let's say the compound interest, right? Time is on your side. So the longer you do this, the higher potential return is possible. So, and the key word here is the longer. Right. So not the quicker and not the faster and not the more, but actually the longer. So, and in order to increase, your chances to stay in the game for as long as possible, ideally forever, the most important thing to learn how to do is how to reduce the risk to its, maximum. Because if you have very low risk, obviously you will stay in the game for a long time, and then the compound interest effect will do its job. Right. So many people, or most people who are, let's say, unsuccessful in that space, they come into this space with the wrong mindset of, let's say, becoming rich quick, right? And they don't usually have the the discipline to be in that for a long period of time. And if the goals that they would set for themselves are in the immediate next coming months or a few months, naturally they need to have a higher risk to see the returns they want to see. But if you would start as a trader and your goal would be to let's say earn a certain income or to have a certain balance in your account in 5 years time, you have all the time in the world to slowly grow and compound your capital with the lowest possible risk. So as always in all industries, it's all about the head game and about the mindset. And especially with investing and trading, the longer term mindset you have, the more successful are you going to be. So this is not a get rich quick kind of an industry. I don't think that even exists, right? There are no shortcuts to success anyway.
No, completely agree. So let's talk, Valeriy, about, let's say somebody's watching this and they maybe, toying with the idea of trading. They're thinking about it. Maybe they've heard a little bit about algorithmic trading already and they're curious, but maybe they have a couple of concerns. And one of my concerns that we actually had a conversation after we were at we were at an event, weren't we, in Gold Coast in Australia? And I remember saying to you, I was like, this does sound, pretty good to be true. Like, so you're telling me that you literally have software that you set up, and it runs a broker account, it runs your broker account for
Mm-hmm.
you, and it will execute all these trades automatically. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember being concerned and skeptical. This does sound a little bit dodgy.
Which is very healthy to be to be
Yes.
skeptical.
Thank you.
Anytime a new opportunity comes your way, you gotta be skeptical.
What advice would you give to someone if they are kind of, maybe thinking of it, but they're a little bit skeptical, a little bit hesitant? What would you say to someone who's in that position?
So first of all, you need to understand why this technology even exists, or how this technology even came to existence. So, you probably have your money in the bank, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you need to understand what is the business model of the bank, or what kind of a service your bank is offering you, right? So your bank's job is to protect your money from thieves, right? So you basically have your money in the bank just because you don't want to have cash at home. I don't think there are, more reasons that are interesting. You are not usually earning any interest on that nowadays, right? So that's the only reason. So they basically just protect your cash. Now, a lot of people are going to the same bank, and they give their money to the bank so that it is protected.
Yeah.
Now, the bank's business model is obviously to work with that money. They do not just store it there, and keep it safe. They actually take your money and they invest your money. Obviously, these banks have a very diversified portfolio. They invest in many different things, but among other things, they also trade with that money. And they do so usually nowadays using algorithmic trading. It's not like any bank has 100 traders, with glasses and big screens sitting there and, opening and closing trades. That maybe was like that in the 90s, but nowadays pretty much everything is automated. So banks and big hedge funds, they do this since maybe a decade, already. It's just that technology wasn't previously accessible to the retail market, to a normal individual, right? So yes, it sounds like it is too good to be true because of the ease of use, but any opportunity in the beginning sounds like it is one. It's
Yeah.
pretty normal because it in my personal opinion, it's not about the opportunity itself. It's more about the success formula that we all have because of at what age our parents used to grow up and develop their success formulas. So we have inherited their success formulas, right? And their success formulas are usually get a good education, get a good job, and you will be happy. So I did, and it wasn't helpful, at all. So I needed to figure out my own success formula, right? So because we think and we have this mindset that in order to be able to earn money, you need to work hard. This is something that we just believe in, and it is hard to get rid of this, false belief, in my opinion. Naturally, anything that would simplify the money making process seems kind of unreal to us. But in fact, if you do some research and you look at how investors and rich people are making money, they do not work much, right? They usually just spend some time talking and enjoying their life, but their capital is growing. So how, right? It is growing because the more capital you have, the more you can make money work for you, right? So I guess we need to just understand how society, works. The majority of people have this belief because the small minority of people who are living a great life need that majority to work for them. So you have to decide, do you want to be the majority with the success formula of having a good job, or do you want to join the minority, grow your capital, and then transition to a phase where your money would work for you, and instead of you working for your money, right? So
Yeah.
it is not necessarily new. This exists, and as you learn more about how this works, all the magic and mystery about it will vanish, and you will see exactly how it is possible to benefit in these markets. The only thing you need to kind of have is the conservative mindset and this long time horizon mindset, right? So if you
Yeah.
have that, this is more than enough. And if you enjoy learning new things, learning about how the financial markets work, which is actually super interesting, this is not a huge learning curve in my opinion, right? So I guess the more you immerse yourself in that world, the more you understand how it works. And understanding is your key to success, right? Because if you don't
Yeah.
understand something, naturally you are afraid, right? This is how we work. If we don't understand something, we usually are afraid, right? This is
Mm.
how, people from different cultures, usually are like a little bit distant because they just don't understand each other, But once you start understanding something, uh, you stop, be afraid of it, and you become more confident, and then you can take decisions that would, you know, um, improve your life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's like you've got to be open to actually seeing that there may be an opportunity there, because when I was younger, and my success formula was work hard, get a good job, and then you'll be happy. And I also had a belief that, investing or trying to do things to grow my capital, it's like, I'm not ready to do that yet, because you need a lot of money to do that. And you hear the saying of like, it takes money to make money. And I was like,
Yes.
well, I don't have money yet, so I can't use it to make money. But actually, it's all percentage based. If you have a £1,000 and you make 10% a month on your £1,000, and you start doing that, not waiting till you have £100,000, but you just start doing
Mm-hmm.
it now,
Mm-hmm.
then you begin to grow your capital on a percentage basis. And I think this is one thing that I just really grasped with the trading side of things, that the power of compounding and the power of just starting, like just begin, that is more powerful than anything else. Because as long as we're
Yes.
just sitting there waiting, like, we're not moving forwards and progressing and
Exactly.
actually starting the journey of
Ignorance on
growth.
fire is better than knowledge on ice.
Oh, I love it. Oh my,
This is beautiful, Dan.
I've
Just
got to
get
use that
started.
phrase.
Yeah, it's I love it. I love it. I came into the industry completely ignorant, but I
Yeah.
was on fire because I knew what the potential is. And
Mm,
instead, what I see many people do is that they try to just acquire knowledge, 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 that take
mm,
no action, and therefore they are getting no results. So the best people in that scene are actually people who came in with no idea, but with a huge willingness to succeed in life financially. Right. And
yeah.
then you see those people who are like, 20 years old and already have all the financial goals hit. How?
Yeah.
It's because when they were like 16, 17, they were like, I don't want to do what my dad is doing.
Mm,
How is this forex stuff works? How is this crypto stuff works? Let me learn more about it. And then boom, because they
yeah.
don't have anything to lose, so this is kind of a mentality that I think we need to all, you know, um, have. Just do something, and anytime you do something, no matter whether the step was a success or a failure, you're going to be learning. And as you learn, you get more understanding, and as you
Mm,
understand more, your results are also better. um, One more thing that I want to mention about what you just said in terms of becoming an investor. I think
mm,
that it used to be like you just mentioned, right? Because you in order to become an investor like 10 years ago, you needed to go, for example, real estate. So you need to have a lot of capital to buy property. Or if you want to become a trader on the forex market, actually 10 years ago it wasn't even possible for normal people. You needed to work with a bank, and I think you needed at least $1 million to become a forex trader just 10 years ago. So it's just very recently changed to the ability to participate, on this retail level, and you can start with a very low capital. And as Dan just mentioned, it is percentage based,
mm,
so you would start compounding over time, and it doesn't really matter how much capital you have, because over time, it would compound if you have the long time, mindset.
yeah.
And also one more thing that I think is also important to understand, because it broadens the picture a bit. You see, if you acquire that skill of taking money and making more out of it, which is basically what traders aspire to learn how to do. There are a lot of people out there and companies out there who would love to work with you, right?
Mm,
Because rich companies and people, their biggest problem is how to make sure that their capital is growing. So we now start working with companies who basically give us access to their capital, and we can start managing capital for them. not investing or risking our own capital at all. You know, in the community, we have quite a few people who actually don't even trade their own money. They just trade, let's say, someone else's money because they know how to do so. They completed certain challenges to be able to qualify it as someone who knows how to, you know, operate these systems. And this opens, you know, huge opportunities, because the profits that you would be making managing someone else's capital are usually shared, you know. So the owner of the capital keeps a small part, and the bigger part is actually goes to the trader himself. So this is one of the biggest opportunities actually that exists right now. You don't need to have capital at all. It's more about learning the skill, and then once you know how to become that wizard, you know, who takes a certain, you know, amount of money and is able to make more out of it. Obviously, this is very lucrative, and everyone would want to work with you.
Yeah, brilliant. And I suppose for anyone watching this, I'll put a link on this video, either top corner up there or maybe a button just below if you're watching this on the Scrap 9 to 5 site. And if somebody is interested to join your community, Valeriy, if somebody wants to you know, use the software that you talk about and really start to learn about this market, I'll make sure that people can click the link either up there or down there and go through. So
Yes,
mate, what final bit of advice would you give? Let's say, again, somebody's thinking, okay, I get that I might be interested in doing this. Maybe I have concerns though about, do I need to be technical? Do I need to be really good with numbers? How long is it going to take me to learn how to, you know, read charts and all this kind of stuff? What would you say to someone who's in that position?
Yeah, so I think that you got to be prepared to learn a few things. I don't think that yeah, I don't think that it is possible to enter any new industry without the willingness to learn a few things. In my personal opinion, the learning curve is not huge. So depending on how much, you know, how much interest you show and how much time you can dedicate, it's actually a matter of a few days before you can start, you know, using such system on virtual money first. This is also important to mention. You know, beginners usually do not trade real capital at all. For a few weeks or months, usually I see people testing these systems on so-called demo accounts, which is just virtual, you know, money, so that you can see that you know, how it works and get used to the system before you decide to invest any real capital into that. So initially, I think that the learning curve is maybe a few weeks before you have grasped the main concepts. And then from there, it will be very unique to your own, let's say, this unique to your own goals, right? What do you want out of it? Do you want to have like a system that is more or less, you know, or as automated as possible, and you want to kind of forget about it and move on with other things in your life? It is possible, and therefore you don't need to go too in depth, right? You just basically trust that you know, the system would work. We also have other people like Dan, for example, who would set up such systems, and he is like, okay, what do I do now, right? So and Dan is looking for ways to go in depth. And if you want to go in depth, obviously you need to you know, learn more, but you need to be willing to learn more. And anytime you learn something new, you can also further experiment, you know, broaden your portfolio, use multiple tools simultaneously. There is a lot of depth, and you can go basically as deep as you want. But you know, to get in, to set up everything and to learn the basic concepts to be able to run such software profitably, I don't want to make any claims, but I'm pretty sure that a week should be enough to get started.
Yeah, I think I was set up in, like, we had a call, didn't we? We had a conversation. I think I was set up in a few days. Didn't take long, and then I was
Yeah,
just
the
running
technical
it.
setup itself is usually maybe 30 minutes, maybe even less than that, right? But you also need to register on a few websites, and if you know, a few tools, you need to connect a few accounts. So in terms of how technical you need to be, I think if you know how to use, you know, interfaces, websites, maybe some, you know, software, a good comparison maybe would be like editing software, you know, basically where you have buttons on your screen and you just, you know, click them, drag and drop. So this type of computer knowledge, you don't need to have like a degree in mathematics, you know.
No.
Also, what I would recommend as a bonus is the willingness to work with numbers and sheets and analyze numbers. So this skill set is perfect for someone who enjoys looking at numbers, analyzing them, and making decisions that are numbers based. I know Dan is in love with sheets. Like we all know the sheets of awesomeness that he is
Love a
creating on a
spreadsheet.
yearly basis. I don't know how many spreadsheets I'm using that were originally created by Dan. So if you love to work with sheets, that would just further improve your performance. You don't need to do that, but since it is a number-based, industry, obviously, if you're not terrified by numbers, you will enjoy this a lot, right?
Yeah. Valeriy, thank you so much for your time, mate.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you for sharing your journey, just giving that perspective, giving that advice. And again, if somebody's watching this and they're thinking, okay, I'm up for giving this a go, I'm up for, immersing myself and beginning this journey, then either top corner of the video or button just below, I'll drop a link to click, and that will take you through to Valeriy's community and the software that Valeriy would recommend. So
Perfect.
Valeriy,
Perfect.
thank you, buddy. Appreciate you.
You're welcome.
I'll see you on a webinar very soon. I'm sure we will connect before long, and
We will.
enjoy the rest of your day, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan, for having me. It was a pleasure to be in your space. Thank you.
No problem. Anytime. I'll speak to you soon.
Cheers.